Bună seara, sunt Cristina Cileacu. Efectele pe care lumea le resimte din cauza războiului din Siria înseamnă mai mult decât criza refugiaților și numărul mare de victime. Securitatea energetică este și ea afectată de conflictul care pare de neoprit. Mehmet Ogutcu este un fost diplomat turc care acum coordonează activitatea unui club exclusivist, ai cărui membri sunt cei mai importanți jucători internaționali din domeniul energiei. Începe Pașaport diplomatic. Este o direcție destul de clară că Rusia se va ocupa mai ales de partea vestică a Siriei. Rusia este acolo pe termen lung și nu cred că va pleca. Declarația aparține lui Mehmet Ogutcu, președintele Bosphorus Energy Club, și a fost făcută într-o analiză despre interesele energetice ale marilor puteri în Orientul Mijlociu.
În ciuda eforturilor diplomatice pe care le fac țările NATO, tensiunile apărute între Rusia și Turcia după doborârea unui avion de luptă rusesc de forțele militare turce sunt tot mai accentuate. Relația dintre cei doi lideri, denumiți de presa internațională țarul și sultanul, era deja încordată încă de când Rusia a luat decizia să se implice în războiul din Siria.
Russia's military intervention in Syria was many times criticized by President Erdogan. But in the same time, Russia and Turkey have a lot of important projects together. Will the Syria intervention affect the relationship between Russia and Turkey? Well, you will become enemies or you will stay friends?
Well, as you know, I mean, throughout the history, Turks and Russians fought about 13 times, in most of which we lost to the Russians. And before the Syrian crisis, the relationship between Turkey and Russia were at its best in many ways. Trade volume is increasing. There's a goal to expand it to $100 billion in the next decade or so. And we have joint ministerial council meetings and energy collaboration, as you know, from Blue Stream to Turkish Stream now, the Rosatom nuclear power plant in Mersin, and Turkey heavily depends on Russian gas, coal, oil, now nuclear, and Turkish construction companies are operating in Russia. And tourism-wise, you know, when the Germans, French stop coming, so we have the Russians using Turkish Mediterranean coast as their own dacha. Therefore, also personally, between Putin and Erdogan, relationship always had been at their best. They understand each other. Sometimes even they call Erdogan Turkey's Putin. And so what happened with Russia's entry into Syrian theater of conflict? And this wasn't welcomed by Ankara, of course, because Turkish position is well known, and the downfall of Assad is the top priority. And whereas what now Putin is trying to do is to prop up Assad, and they, I think, got an intelligence, probably from Iranians, on the ground intelligence, that if something has not been done over the next few months, Assad might fall. Mm-hmm. His position is so weak. And Putin, I think, waited until the nuclear deal with Iran concluded, and General Qasem
went to Moscow,
I think 5 days after the UN decision. Qasem Soleimani, of course, is a legendary figure of revolutionary guards operating outside Iran. And so
inside Syria.
I believe that they cooked up together a plan and to make sure that Assad will not fall and to make sure that ISIS will not be expanded. But when Russians came into Syria, what we saw is that in the first series of attacks, 57 airstrikes, 55 was against the what we call
Syrian
moderate rebels, Muslim rebels, and 2 only against ISIS. So it looks that there's a very clear indication that Russians will focus more on the western side of Syria. They're Damascus, Aleppo, Latakia, where they have their naval base, and they are also building some air bases. And they will be cleaning around it, irrespective of who they are, ISIS or al-Nusra or other moderate Muslims. And so Russia is there to stay. I don't think that they will leave. Perhaps Syria one day will be divided into autonomous zones, representing each the Kurds, Alawites, Turkomans, and Druze, and Arabs, and with a perhaps post-Assad Damascus, weak government, central government in Damascus. But at a time when nobody is willing to put the boots on the ground, and Putin took this challenge. It wasn't only for saving Assad, in my view, it is also to project Russian power to Middle East as a global player. It also comes at a time when sanctions and low oil price environment are hitting Russia so heavily, and at a time when Russia also consolidated Eurasia Union with Kazakhstan, Belarus, perhaps in the future other CIS countries. So Russia wanted to show that they will be following through what Primakov in the past used to do, create a Russian presence in the region, but this time in partnership with Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus, and Hezbollah. So it also indicates a Shia axis being established. If you ask my personal opinion, I'm somehow relieved that there is a power trying to clean up, and of course there will be lots of difficulties, and it's also a wake-up call for the US, not so much for Europe, because that shows the geopolitical intentions of Russia, and they also got some sort of blessing and endorsement from China. There was a Chinese navy in the Mediterranean warm waters military exercise together. So it shows that there is a game-changing development in the making in that part of the world, which has a lot to do also with energy, security, strategic alliances in the region.
In this case, who is fighting ISIS? Because right now they are controlling quite a large part of Syria and the oil from those parts as well.
Well, currently Assad regime in Damascus controls 20% of the territory. Disproportionately more population, but in terms of territory. So 80% is out there in the hands of rebels or ISIS. And there is a natural division of labor as far as I can see. The US is taking, and US-led alliance is taking care of the eastern part of Syria, while Russia is focusing more on western part, where they want to create a stronghold and protect it from anybody else. It will be a contaminated region. And also the dangerous thing is that Russians are trying the patience of Turks, and the Russian fighters are flying also cruise missiles overhead, crisscross. And I understand that there is an arrangement between Americans and Russians to avoid any collusion. Also Netanyahu was in Moscow and the Russian generals went to Tel Aviv. So there is sort of arrangement between regional powers, but Turkey is not included in that yet. And the Russians said, well, send your generals to Moscow, and Turks said, send your generals to Ankara, so they couldn't still sort out. So there is the prospect of conflict expanding. And Russians have not seen anything yet, because they are facing, if they will, an army of decapitating warriors. And it might be worse than in Afghanistan, what Soviet Union suffered. And I don't believe that the Russian public will be behind Putin. They are quite happy to fight and devote resources in Crimea, eastern Ukraine, next door, in the future perhaps Kazakhstan, wherever, in Georgia we saw it. But Syria is a bit far. And but they also
different.
They also have given some signals to major powers and regional countries that even from the Caspian they can fire a missile and hit the target. This is a signal to all that nobody is immune from Russian missiles. Therefore, I see that perhaps we might go both ways. Either in collaboration with Russia, we could stabilize the region, get rid of the ISIS monsters, and create a stable government in Syria and then in Iraq, or it might lead to more confrontation, east-west. Mm-hmm. And if Russia handles it in a very rude way, and some accidents might lead to harsh words. Erdogan was talking about reviving the energy collaboration with Putin. I don't think this is going to happen because there is a very heavy interdependence between the two sides. Because Turkey is Gazprom's second largest consumer, and so there is win-win situation in the collaboration we have, including in nuclear power plant. And I don't think Turkey can replace Russian gas supplies overnight. It will take ages to do that. So both sides, I think, will constrain themselves. It needs to be managed. Perhaps keep the Syrian matter a bit separate from the bilateral relations, which is very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think we have to divorce ourselves from the emotions and act in a more realistic, practical, and realpolitik manner in the relationship. And Turkey, I think, realized more and more that its rhetoric in the past, Turkey could join Shanghai Cooperation Organization or cozy relations with Russia, Iran. Now, in light of this instability and great deal of insecurity created in the region, although it is a regional powerhouse economically, militarily, and politically, as well as with its cultural hinterland, I think the alliance with NATO is critical. And this is what the message Erdogan tried to give in Brussels as well.
Eforturile pe care le face Uniunea Europeană pentru a ține sub control valul de refugiați din Orientul Mijlociu nu dau încă rezultate. Oamenii continuă să ajungă pe continentul nostru, dar ceea ce le oferă acum Europa este limitat.
There is a need for strong solidarity within NATO, with European Union, so that we can handle the Syrian crisis, the tragedy, human tragedy it generated, the massive flow of migrants. We have now officially 2.2 million Syrians in Turkey, but since the border we have with Syria, common border, 920 kilometers long, is almost easy to pass, penetrate. So my guess, this uneducated guess, is probably we have more than 3 million Syrians in Turkey. And this is creating a huge constraint and tension within Turkey. I mean, a country of 77 million, absorbing 3 million, more than 3 million people, the social, economical, racial problems that it will generate, and most of them, also hoping to move to Europe and trying to cross Turkish coast to Greek islands, dying and drowned. This is a huge tragedy that we haven't seen for decades. And unfortunately, there is no burden sharing. Turkey is taking the brunt of all this challenge itself. And I think it's very important for Europe and US to understand that they have to come and work with Turkey.
First of all.
First, to deal with this huge refugee crisis. Secondly, if we don't find a solution to the Syrian crisis alone, in partnership with Iran, Russia, whatever, the problem is going to grow bigger. It's not going to go away. The earlier we engage, the better, but nobody is interested sending their blue helmets. It's a huge risk, huge challenge. So I don't think I have any clear idea, neither anybody. We need to have a vision towards Syria, towards which we can work together in collaboration. If it is redrawing the Sykes-Picot map, that the French and British did back in 1915, and then thanks to Bolshevik Revolution we became aware of it, it will be quite difficult. I think we might need to perhaps demarcate these borders, reflecting the reality on the ground for the Kurds, Turkomans, Sunnis, Shia, Durizis, and Alawites, so that with international guarantees we can try to maintain the crisis perhaps in a limited way. Otherwise, it might wipe out the whole region. The House of Saudi is in danger. They are so scared of Iran in Yemen, in Bahrain, now in Syria, and also Egypt is quite fragile under General Sisi. We saw what happened in Libya after Gaddafi, and Libya is in pieces.
Turmoil, yes.
And in Iraq, so thanks God, al-Maliki is out, thanks to US intervention. And but still, the Sunni ISIS Baghdad, the Erbil, the Kurds. So it's still a difficult project. Iran, I think, will be very assertive starting from next year when the sanctions will be progressively lifted, because it has a clear intention of becoming a regional powerhouse and creating its own spheres of influence. Shia crescent, which is already there, and if you try to create your Sunni crescent, and that's going to be quite dangerous. I think we have to do away with this ethnical and sectarian divisions in the region. There is a lot of role for this, for European Union, for US, for China and Russia as well, in collaboration with regional countries.
Estimările specialiștilor arată că, în ciuda problemelor politice, Rusia va rămâne principalul exportator de gaz pentru următorii ani pentru Turcia. Țările din Orientul Mijlociu dețin împreună 48% din rezerva mondială de petrol și 43% din cea de gaz. Ce se va întâmpla cu acestea în condițiile în care conflictele armate din regiune vor continua?
How is the entire situation in the Middle East affecting Europe energy resources?
Well, we are lucky because of the low oil price environment, depressed demand all around the world, including in Europe, in China, in India, and declining levels of investment, because all big-ticket, capital-intensive projects have been put on the hold. And so Middle East is not as critical as it used to be. For the US, forget about the Middle East. You know, they are about to become the world's largest natural gas and crude oil producers by 2017, replacing Saudi Arabia and Russia. So Americans are not worried about their dependence on the Middle East. Europeans still depend a great deal, but there are alternative sources. And whatever happens in the region, we know it from the past, the oil and gas will continue to flow this way or another. The prices will go up and down, depending on the geopolitical tension in the region. The price is critical, but Europe, I don't think, will be badly affected by this. In terms of natural gas, Russia continues to be the biggest supplier of European gas needs, followed by Norway, and North Africa is the third. Libya, sooner or later, will come to picture, and the southern gas corridor going through Turkey from Azerbaijan, still limited, 16 BCM, and 10 for Europe, 6 for Turkey. And I wouldn't call it a southern gas corridor, because when you talk about corridor, you should talk about at least 50-60 BCM of gas, like in Nord Stream 2, 110 BCM. And but in the future, I believe that this pipeline, TANAP and TAP, will serve like a magnet. And once the infrastructure is in place, we'll be attracting further flows from Kurdish region of Iraq, and then from perhaps Iran, and more from Azerbaijan, and one day, God knows when, from Turkmenistan across Caspian. Right now it's not possible because of the Russian and Iranian reservations. Under Putin, I don't think it will ever happen. If it happens only, I always joke saying that this gas can be brought across the Caspian only by as an email attachment. When we talk about European energy security or supply security, we have to understand the game and the dynamics outside Europe. You produce so much blueprint strategies. You have white paper, blue paper, green papers, but most of them are disconnected from the reality on the ground. Not so much interesting to the business community, which will make the decisions. They don't care what your geopolitical agenda is. What they care is whether it's commercially feasible. If you are able to fill the gap, subsidize all these projects, fine, come and finance your political projects. But the private sector will be driven only by commercial realities. So we have to understand that. And also, I don't think that we pay enough attention to enhancing competitiveness of the European industries. And Europe, I don't believe that is acting in an efficient way. Perhaps we shouldn't expect that in a union of 28 countries with divergent interests, different energy fuel structures. So how could you have a combined and coherent energy strategy? Perhaps we should let it be more flexible and less regulatory You know, there's excessive regulations, standards, which stifle the European Union vis-à-vis the rest of the world. Therefore, sometimes, you know, I feel that we are better off in Turkey without being a member of the European Union. In any case, it's not going to happen for reasons related to Turkey itself as well as European Union. And unless there is a breakthrough in the international conjuncture, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But it might be better perhaps for Turkey to stay outside this straitjacket that Europe has put itself in. And, but I believe that there is a need for closer partnership, irrespective of whether Turkey becomes a member or not. Because Turkey is at a crossroad. There is so much Turkey can provide. We see that with the refugee crisis, with the energy supplies. Also China's famous gigantic Silk Road project, you know, passing through 3 continents, 85 countries, and creating a trade volume of about $15 trillion. These are huge, huge undertakings. Chinese are doing it practically, whereas in Europe we still talk about projects. Remember Nabucco, more than 10 years we talked, nothing happened. The money we needed there to make it operational was less than the renovation of an underground station in Budapest. And so Europe fails to implement such huge projects. It's better to leave it to those operators, practitioners, which can do it.
Do you think that Europe reach a limit of its powers right now?
I mean, you know, look at the United States. It's the United States together. And here in the European Union, you are a union of countries, not the states, and each of them with different agendas and levels of development and diversity. And I don't believe that you can create a US type of union. And therefore, we have to recognize it. We have to recognize the diversity, we have to recognize the importance of flexibility and practicalities, rather than imposing Soviet-style, you know, uniformity on the European Union. If we continue that way, I'm afraid that we will fail in the new global system emerging. Right now, we are in the European Union, the largest economy in the world, but it's an aging population, losing competitiveness, more rigid, and sort of a castle psychology, closing down, whereas we have to be opening up, dealing with Russia, with Turkey, Middle East and North Africa, Central Asia, transatlantic relationship, Latin America, lots of talks, hot air, rhetoric, papers, but in reality, unfortunately, we are lagging behind other major powers. Unless there is a major overhaul, a new sense of mission, I think the future of EU doesn't look very attractive. It is sad for me to say this because, you know, I'm a graduate of Collège d'Europe in Bruges, so I'm a Eurocrat, and I'm a believer of Europeanness. However, if we continue that way, unfortunately, Europe's role in the world will be quite minimal. Political dwarf, perhaps still economic giant, and we will not be able to compete with US and China, the emerging powers of BRICS as well.
Închidem aici ediția din această săptămână, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Ne revedem sâmbătă viitoare la aceeași oră, 22:30. La revedere!